welcome to a new episode of Cheaters Always Cheat. Like, subscribe, and share to stay connected.
I am William. Met Sophia, who's now my fiancée, around 2 years ago through a friend. Had a messy breakup with my ex due to her cheating. That really knocked my confidence down, and I couldn't stop whining to my buddies about it. My pal Adam, one of my crew, suggested I start dating again, or I'd just keep sulking forever. He had a point, but I wasn't keen on admitting it because I wasn't mentally prepared for that. The fear of going through that pain again held me back. Eventually, after loads of pestering from Adam and his girl, I gave in to meet one of her pals. That's when I crossed paths with Sophia. We all went on this double date with Adam and his gal Katie. Picked a nice restaurant for the occasion, and I pushed for them to be there with us. My first meeting with Sophia, I was pretty sure I'd screw it up somehow. I'd been out of the dating game for so long that I felt rusty. But you know what? That date with Sophia actually turned out pretty smooth. Having Adam and Katie with us was a comfort, because we had plenty to chat about. Sophia had just graduated and was interning at some office. She was all fired up about her future plans, and that ambition of hers was pretty appealing. I shared about my business, which was doing pretty well at the time. So when I got back home that night, I was feeling pretty darn good. It hit me that I was ready to dive back into dating, as long as the next person was worth it. And Sophia seemed like a genuinely cool person. After our first meetup, I shot Adam a text to thank him for dragging me out of my slump. He sent over Sophia's number and wished me luck. I reached out to Sophia, letting her know I had a blast and was looking forward to another hangout. She replied fast, saying she had a great time too. We decided to catch up again the next weekend. That whole week my brain was stuck on that date. The anticipation was driving me nuts. I even wished I had suggested an earlier day than the weekend. I know it sounds kind of crazy to be so obsessed after just one meeting, but I couldn't help myself. There was something seriously magnetic about Sophia. Finally, the weekend rolled around and I was free from the waiting game. I was super concerned about looking good, so I changed my outfit a bunch of times before settling on a dark blue shirt and slim pants. I got there right on time, and guess what? Sophia was already there. It felt a bit strange, but I went in and said hi. We sat down and got into chatting mode. And let me tell you, I didn't even realize how time flew by. The conversation flowed so naturally. We covered a bunch of topics, and every single one was a total blast. Man, I was totally digging how well we connected after that. We started dating, and I swear, it felt like the best thing that had ever happened to me. In just half a year, we decided to take the plunge and get engaged. When Adam and Katie heard the news, they swung by to give us their congrats. They were over the moon for us, talking about how they couldn't wait for the wedding bells to chime. I was kinda leaning towards a chill, no-fuss approach, but my peeps were all about going big. They wanted a grand, fancy wedding, something that really showcased the joy of our partnership. Now, I wasn't exactly on the same page, but guess what? Sophia was. And when she's on board, well, I follow suit. So the whole wedding show kicked off, and let me tell you, everyone was pumped. We were scouting locations like detectives, trying to find the perfect spot. Sophia was all about keeping it natural, no fancy ballrooms with fake decor for her. We scored this stunning spot just outside the city. There were trees, flowers, the whole shebang. As soon as I laid eyes on it, I could practically see myself saying I do there. I asked Sophia what she thought, and let me tell you, she was just as blown away by the beauty. That place was seriously captivating and breathtaking. I was thrilled that I stumbled upon this gem. Sent pics of the place to my parents, and they were totally into it too. Man, I thought this wedding was going to be the stuff of dreams. Turns out I was dead wrong. One day I swung by the coffee house to pick up Sophia. She was chilling with her friends, and wouldn't you know it, Katie was right there too. I was only familiar with Katie and Helen from Sophia's crew. Those two were the real tight ones in her circle. So, while Sophia was using the restroom, I got to chatting with her pals, killing time. They spilled the beans that they were scheming up a surprise bachelorette bash for her, planned about 2 months ahead of the wedding. I scratched my head, asking why they were jumping the gun like that. Katie, with her quick wit, explained that if they waited too close to the wedding, it wouldn't be much of a surprise anymore. Sophia's friends were throwing around jokes about having sizzling hot dancers at the party. I had to give them a heads up, telling them not to mess with my future wife's head and get her all riled up. But just as we were having this back and forth, bam! Sophia returned from her bathroom break, and that put a pin in our chatter. I whisked her away to catch a flick, and honestly, time was zipping by since we were knee-deep in wedding prep. Choosing the wedding dress, let me tell you, That was like the ultimate dilemma. Sophia had this keen eye for fashion, and all I wanted was to see her happy. Now, when it came to my tux, she gave me the green light, and I was cool with her choice. I had faith in Sophia's taste in fashion. She kept her wedding dress under wraps, said it was some sort of tradition not to show it off before the big day. And wouldn't you know it? I accidentally walked in on her once and got an eyeful. Man, I was stuck like a deer in headlights, 'cause she looked like she'd woven a spell with her beauty. She was like a freaking angel in that white dress, and I was utterly stunned. My jaw? That was on the floor. I didn't see it coming, I'll tell you that much. And Sophia, well, she caught me in the act and gave me this horrified look, demanding that I beat it out of there. I couldn't help myself, you know? Stepped up to give her a kiss, but she kinda nudged me out of her room and slammed the door shut. After a few minutes, she popped out dressed differently. I was just hanging out in the hallway. Hopped up when she reappeared and finally laid that kiss on her I'd been holding back. She mentioned some superstition about not seeing the bride in her gown before the wedding. I threw my luck in the pot, told her I was down with that, got myself a smile and a kiss in return. At that moment, I was feeling like the luckiest guy alive. Then came the next week. Sophia asked if we could catch a flick, a new one that had just hit the screens. Had to give her the no, 'cause it was the very Saturday her buddies had in mind for something. That bachelorette party plan. So, I cooked up some work excuse, and that didn't sit too well with her. I didn't think it'd be such a huge deal, but she was proper cheesed off. Thing is, she'd mentioned it a few days back. Maybe that's why she figured I'd rearrange her calendar or something. I decided to let her steam, all part of the plan to keep the bachelorette thing under wraps. When that night came, Sophia was over at her place while her pals swung by and whisked her away to a club, where they'd set up a private shindig just for her. Helen and Katie had dropped me a text about it, keeping me in the loop. Meanwhile, I was kicking back at home, watching TV and waiting for that text from Sophia that I knew was coming. I waited until midnight, but she didn't text back. I fell asleep while watching a movie. When I woke up in the morning, I checked my phone to respond to Sophia, but I was surprised to see that she still hadn't messaged me. It was strange. No matter how much we argued or fought, we never ignored each other like this before. And after the bachelorette party, she must have known I was aware of her friend's plans. So I had to decline, but she hadn't replied. It felt really odd, and I sensed that something was off. I tried calling Sophia, but she didn't answer the phone. I started getting worried. I went downstairs and had breakfast. I needed to check on her because things didn't seem normal. Sophia wasn't someone who would ignore me or not answer my calls. I was about to leave my house when my phone rang. It was Sophia. I answered quickly and asked if everything was all right. Sophia's voice sounded weird. She didn't sound okay. She said she was fine, but her tone told me otherwise. She blamed it on a hangover from last night. She had gotten really drunk and hadn't responded to my text. I felt relieved. 2 weeks later, I was at Sophia's place. She called and invited me over, saying she had some important news to share. She made it sound super urgent, so I headed straight to her place. Once I got in, she told me to sit and drop the bombshell. She was pregnant. I was totally surprised. That was the last thing I thought she'd say. I hadn't even thought about it, but this news didn't bother me. Actually, it felt great. I needed a few minutes to process this big news, but I was genuinely happy. The woman I loved most was going to be my wife, and now we were having a baby together. I couldn't have been happier. I didn't feel completely prepared to be a dad, but who really is? The important thing is being ready to give it your all. I hugged Sophia tight and gave her a kiss. I let her know how thankful I was and that this news just added to my happiness. But Sophia seemed anxious. She wasn't thrilled. Maybe I reassured her that we'd handle it together and I'd always be there for her. She managed to smile, but I could tell she was uneasy. I guessed it was the mix of wedding jitters and this huge change. I tried my best to comfort her as much as I could. The next day, I was at my office when my phone rang. It was Sophia's friend Helen. It was a bit odd, but I answered. Helen sounded really concerned. She asked if we could meet up urgently. I was hesitant because I wanted to talk to Sophia first. But before I could voice my thoughts, Helen told me I couldn't let Sophia know about this under any circumstances. It was connected to her. I wasn't comfortable with the idea, but I agreed to meet Helen at a cafe. When we met, Helen told me to take a deep breath and listen carefully and patiently. She shared that Sophia had been intimate with one of the dancers at her bachelorette party. I was shocked beyond words. Helen revealed that the baby Sophia was carrying wasn't mine. It was the dancer's child. I wanted to protest, but Helen took out her phone and showed me some pictures. There, clear as day, was Sophia with a dancer. Helen explained that she had tried to intervene, but Sophia was too drunk to listen, and none of the other girls stopped her. Helen had struggled to keep this secret, but when she found out about Sophia's pregnancy, she couldn't keep it from me any longer. Doing that wouldn't have been right. I asked Helen to text me the pictures. Back home, I cried my eyes out like a little kid. Once I was done bawling, I started planning my payback. I could have easily just called off the wedding, but that felt too simple and weak. Instead, I decided to leave Sophia on our wedding day. After a long week, the day finally arrived. I'd been counting down to it eagerly because it marked the day I'd kick Sophia out of my life for good. I set up a projector, planning to reveal the truth to everyone. I got myself ready, and things were falling into place. Right before the ceremony, I grabbed everyone's attention. I told them there was something I needed them all to see. It meant a lot to me. All eyes turned to the projector screen as I started showing the pictures and videos Helen had sent. A hush fell over the crowd. People gasped. Hands flew to their mouths at what was unfolding. Sophia stared at me, tears streaming down her face. I looked back at her, feeling nothing but revulsion. I declared the wedding was off, explaining my ex-fiancé was a cheater carrying some dancer's baby. Sophia collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. She just kept saying sorry and crying, but I walked away and went back home. That day was one of the worst in my life. I was in a ton of pain. Being betrayed like that hit me hard. It was a hurt I wasn't ready for. But at the same time, I was relieved I found out before getting married. I appreciated Helen for not letting me live in that lie. For weeks, Sophia tried reaching out, but I didn't reply. I completely cut her out of my life for good. She left me a bunch of voicemails, explaining she was really drunk, out of her mind, and that it was a one-time thing. I just blocked her because I didn't want to hear those excuses. I don't know how it happened, but Helen and I started getting together. Sophia and her other friends had kicked her out of the group for spilling their dirty secret. Helen's honesty drew me in, and we began dating. A few months later, Adam told me the stripper who got Sophia pregnant had disappeared. Sophia had a baby boy and was struggling as a single mom, living a rough life. I didn't feel sorry for her. She brought it all on herself. Now, take a pause before you keep going. Story 2. 6 years back, I found out that my fiancé Ashley, 23 female, was cheating on me with Dean, 26 male, a friend of her sister Brittany, 24 female. This happened right after we celebrated 5 years together and were engaged for 2. About 2 years ago, my old friend Megan, 25 female, came back to town with her kids after divorcing her abusive husband Keith, 25 male. She called me and suggested we catch up, and I asked Ashley if she wanted to join to see Megan's kids, whom we hadn't seen since they were 2 years old. Ashley wasn't feeling well, probably due to some bad fish, so she told me to go alone to say hi and catch up. She suggested Megan could visit us on the weekend to play with the kids. After saying goodbye to everyone, I gave Ashley a kiss and promised to be home in about 2 hours. Brittany and Dean offered to drive Ashley home while I went to see Megan. At Megan's place, I was overjoyed to see the little ones running toward me, calling me Big Daddy. I'm their godfather. I gave them both a big hug, and Megan came up to me, gave me a side hug, and told me she missed me. She wondered where Ashley was, so I explained that we had dinner to celebrate our anniversary, but Ashley got sick after ordering the codfish and chips. I mentioned that her sister and her sister's boyfriend were taking her home to rest. I assured her I'd be back in 2 hours. Megan told me she was just putting the twins to bed and asked if we could meet up on Saturday along with Ashley. She suggested we all go to the park and have a blast. I agreed and said that sounded like a great plan. Megan wished me goodnight, and I hugged all 3 of them again, telling them they were welcome home and how excited I was to see them on Saturday. As I left, I thought about calling Ashley to check if she needed anything from the store. I tried calling twice, but it seemed like she wasn't near her phone, which is typical of her. She often leaves it on the divider at the main entrance of our house. I tried calling Dean, but he didn't pick up, which started to worry me. So I decided to call Brittany. She answered and asked how Megan and the kids were doing. I told her they were good and excited to be back home. I then asked about Dean and Ashley. Brittany mentioned that she had been paged for emergency surgery at work. I told her that neither of them picked up the phone. She found it odd that Dean didn't answer immediately, especially at this time of night, but said it's typical of Ashley not to pick up right away. My silence probably raised some questions for Brittany. She knew Dean had a habit of flirting with Ashley, but Ashley always shut him down and even made it clear he couldn't be around her unless her sister or I was present. Brittany tried to reassure me by saying that it's likely nothing to worry about. She suggested that Ashley might just be sick, and Dean could be helping her out, like holding her hair back as she vomits. She advised me not to jump to conclusions and to stay calm. She believed that Ashley is deeply loyal to me and uncomfortable with attention from other guys. Unfortunately, despite her calming words, my anger was building up. It bothered me that neither Brittany nor I was there with them right now, and Dean shouldn't have been alone with Ashley. Growing up, my family wasn't exactly the happiest bunch. I learned to keep quiet and only make a move when it was necessary. During school, I faced bullying due to my quiet nature. Brittany and Megan were my sole companions through my childhood and all of high school, more or less. Ashley showed interest in me when she was just 12. She used to boast about me to Brittany, claiming she loved me and couldn't wait until she was old enough to be with me. Brittany shared all the details with me, which I found pretty endearing. When I turned 17, right before my birthday after graduating, I asked Ashley if she wanted to be a couple. She was beyond excited to hear that, and practically jumped into my arms. For the next 6 years, I went above and beyond to ensure she was happy, well taken care of, and treated with the utmost respect and loyalty. At every party we attended, it felt like we were in our own world, just the two of us, dancing and talking. I'm not much of a talker, typically staying silent in groups. I always made sure everyone else had their say, never interrupting. Sure, I admit I've let people take advantage of me from time to time, but honestly, I didn't mind too much. Their lives were going nowhere fast, while mine felt just about perfect to me. I never once suspected her of cheating. She always appeared content with how we lived and all our date nights. Despite the difficulty in admitting it, she seemed satisfied. We managed to work through every problem that came our way, whether hers or mine. We always worked together to find positive solutions, and she was the one who often initiated emotional closeness. She had her personal boundaries, and I respected them fully. When it came to friends, I never wanted to push those boundaries. I took the time to get to know everyone because I wanted to ensure that the people I cared about were included in various activities. Putting others before myself was a habit I developed, influenced by the patience and humility I learned growing up with my brothers. After getting home, I parked a few houses away and tried my hardest to stay composed while walking. Inside, my anger was boiling, and it reminded me of my dad. He was a massive man standing at 6 to 7 inches and weighing 278 pounds, built like a powerhouse. My family had a strong background. We worked with steel beams, and we were all quite robust. I grew up on a farm, and my brothers and I all stood above 6 feet in height. Personally, I'm 6 and 4 inches and 263 pounds, with broad shoulders. When I got into a fit of rage, my strength became pretty intimidating. My brothers ranged in height, some matching our dad's stature, while others were shorter than me. We were a big family with 5 brothers in total. All of us ended up in construction jobs. I leaned towards design and building instead of managing a company. So when it was my time, I joined Megan's father's company, and let me tell you, I absolutely loved every year working there. Among my siblings, I was the calm one, the only one who had never faced charges, been jailed, or been involved in domestic misuse. That is, until that night at home. I stood by the front door, struggling to stay composed, attempting to convince myself that nothing was really happening. Slowly, I unlocked the door and went in. And yes, you've got it right. I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. The words I heard made my face flush with anger. I went up the stairs, stopped at the door, and listened. There were moans and whispers, words exchanged in between heavy breaths. I stood there trying to figure out the best way to handle this, attempting to be rational, until I heard her say those 4 infuriating words. Man, recalling this hurts. Sorry, I'm upset and I don't know how long until I completely break down. I've been writing this post for the past 3 hours. A broken lane in my mind is messing with my focus. I overheard her saying, "Do that to me." It was something she never let me do. That was the tipping point. I lost control, kicked the door open, which shocked both of them. Neither of them knew I could get that angry. Dean stumbled back and was visibly shaken. She tried to explain, but I didn't want to hear it anymore. I just couldn't take it. I yelled at her, and I don't mean regular yelling. I mean a raw, primal scream, veins bulging, telling her to shut the duck up. She wet herself and passed out. I stared at Dean, stormed over, and grabbed him, shouting how long this had been going on. He admitted it had been 3 months. I just told him to get the hell out of there. He tried to grab his clothes, but I told him he was running home unclothed or not leaving at all. He took off, and I followed. When we got to the front door, I slammed it shut so hard that the frame broke and the door went through the other side. The cops arrived a few minutes later. I carried the useless woman to the couch, removed my mother's ring from her finger, and took back the necklace I'd given her for our anniversary. The police arrested me and had a conversation with me. I spilled everything, telling them about her behavior towards him and my concerns that he might be hurting her. But those jerks were actually messing around behind my back for the last 3 months. It's my home. But the moment I stepped in, it stopped being her place. They nabbed Dean not too far away, and that idiot tried to spin a tale about some giant monster breaking in and killing his girlfriend at his place. Dean dug his own hole, all right. I kicked the cheater out as soon as she woke up and I told her to rot in hell. Brittany swung by about 7 hours after she dropped them off at my spot. She saw the police tape and the whole scene. She asked the cop on duty about what went down, but they wouldn't spill the beans at that moment. She checked her messages from Ashley, then went to see Megan to give her the lowdown on the situation. Megan bailed me out, and her dad was there too, saying they'd cover whatever I needed. I just told them I wanted to see it all go up in flames, please. Fast forward to today, Megan and I are married now, and the Chaos twins are the older siblings to 2 boys and a girl. Ashley is completely cut off from my life. She's dead to me. In a twisted turn of fate, she's also physically gone, having ended her own life after getting pregnant by Dean and suffering a termination, only for him to bail on her. I can't deny that part of me felt strangely satisfied about that, though it's a painful emotion to grapple with. I apologize for the lengthy read. This took a lot out of me tonight. Take care, stay safe, stay true to yourself, and never let anyone walk all over you. I wish things had turned out better 6 years ago. Regrettably, I wish I hadn't asked her out 11 years back. Story 3. My fiancée, 26 female, was seriously spoiled. Things were handed to her on a silver platter, but she didn't seem to notice. She carried this notion that life was easy, and everything would just fall into place. I couldn't help but be drawn to her optimism. She had a way of attracting people like sunshine. Of course, people bent over backward to give her whatever she desired. She hardly had to ask for anything. We were together for 2.5 years before I popped the question. After a year of dating, I met her family, and they really took a liking to me. We grew close, and it felt like she was meant to be my future wife. We got into the wedding planning, and it was bound to be a grand affair. Her parents spared no expense, agreeing to fulfill any of their daughter's wishes. Then, one day she took one of her bridesmaids, Heather, along to order our wedding cake. When she got home, I was all set to hear the details and see the pictures of her cake choice. But instead something seemed off. She mentioned not feeling well and needing to rest. I inquired about how it went, but she simply said they couldn't decide on one. I was concerned for her, but that was just the beginning of her strange behavior. Over the next 4 weeks, a number of odd things happened. One night, my fiancée told me she had taken one of her bridesmaids out to dinner because the friend was considering cheating on her husband. It caught me off guard, but I wished her luck in convincing her friend that cheating is never worth it. She didn't return until I was already asleep, and the next day, all she mentioned was that she did her best to talk her out of it. On another night, she left our apartment while I was in the shower. It came as a total surprise, so I tried calling her, but she only answered after 3 attempts. She said she realized we needed more kitty litter for the cats. After she hung up on me, I discovered a full bag of kitty litter stashed at the back of the closet, almost like she had hidden it from me. After she came back 3 hours later, without the kitty litter, I asked if she was having doubts about us. She immediately denied it and said I didn't need to be so concerned about her stepping out. This was both troubling and strange. I then asked if her friend was cheating on her husband. She was taken aback by the question, but admitted that her friend was indeed cheating. I mentioned that it was unfortunate and suggested she tell her friend's husband so he could initiate divorce proceedings. She gave me this look like I was crazy and said she wouldn't betray her friend, even if she was cheating on her husband. I told her that although it's true cheating wrecks lives, her friend's husband deserves to know the truth about his wife's betrayal, because who would want to remain married to a cheater? She couldn't meet my gaze, clearly avoiding discussing the matter any further. All of a sudden, there was just a single month left until the wedding. My fiancée came home late, saying she'd been at a birthday party for Heather. Once she had dozed off in bed, I received a message from Heather herself. She confided that she felt uneasy coming to me, but she also felt uncomfortable keeping secrets. My fiancé had instructed her to lie to me if I asked about the birthday party. What's more, she was with Heather when she was supposed to be arranging our wedding cake. There, she met a guy who started hitting on her. He questioned if she was truly certain about getting married, suggesting he could win her heart if she allowed him to try. It took her aback, but she handed over her number and essentially gave him an open invitation. Heather asked me if my fiancé had been acting odd, or if I suspected her of seeing someone else. I admitted that yes, I did, and I thanked Heather for revealing this to me. While she was asleep, I decided to check her phone. I came across messages exchanged between her and AP even before she got home that night. He asked if he was capturing her heart, and her response was a definite yes. That night, as my fiancé slept, I secretly installed spyware on her phone to see what they were saying to each other. When she woke up, I informed her that I'd be staying at my best man's Josh place until the ceremony in a month, citing superstitious reasons. Surprisingly, she didn't protest or argue. In fact, she seemed pretty content with the idea of having the house to herself. During our time apart, she escalated the number of intimate and romantic messages she exchanged with AP, even going as far as to tell him he was a better lover than me. At this point, I was already coming to terms with the fact that our relationship was over. I knew I wouldn't be marrying her, and it felt like she was on the verge of calling off the wedding any moment now. You know what? She didn't call it off. She informed AP over the phone that she had to go through with marrying me, because her family had already given their approval. However, since I hadn't caught on to their affair yet, they intended to keep seeing each other secretly. Her plan was to frame me for cheating on her down the line, also she could claim the house and alimony payments. I couldn't wrap my head around the sheer maliciousness of her scheme. She aimed to utterly destroy my life, even though I hadn't done a single thing to deserve it. I confided in my best man, Josh, spilling all the details. He joined forces with me to hatch a plan for revenge against her. Armed with images of their messages, we plotted the most humiliating moment of her existence. The day of the wedding arrived, and we got ourselves ready, pretending it was the real deal. But here's the kicker. We had a few unexpected surprises up our sleeves. The chapel had these speakers set up, so we rigged ourselves with small mics. I stood at the altar, stewing in resentment for every moment spent with this entitled woman. As my supposed-to-be wife walked down the aisle, her emotional and supportive family snapped pics and filmed the scene. Then, out of nowhere, Josh stepped up, booming, "Hold up a sec!" His voice carried clearly, and it instantly made everyone squirm. The bride froze mid-stride. Josh locked eyes with me, even grabbed my face in a mocking way, and quipped, "Guess we got the wrong lover, huh?" The crowd gasped as he darted toward the curtain behind us, yanking it aside to unveil AP. He was suited up, holding a sign that boldly read, "Marry me instead." And wouldn't you know it, the bride fainted. Pandemonium ensued, and folks were seriously losing their minds. Confusion hung thick in the air, but I could tell they were itching to direct their anger at someone. After she woke up with a damp cloth on her forehead, her family demanded explanations. Little did she know that Josh and I had reached out to AP, asking him to marry her in my place. Somehow we managed to convince him that this was her real wish, that their wedding would be a joyful day. He knelt down with his sign, and my fiancée just broke down in tears. With her family pressing for answers, she gazed at me, tears streaming down her face. Her dad had had enough. He grabbed AP's arm and yanked him outside. Right there at the altar, she sank to her knees before me, pleading for forgiveness, insisting that she genuinely wanted to marry me. That's why she hadn't called off the wedding. Not a single word escaped my lips. Josh began reading aloud the messages between her and AP, pronouncing the raciest words loud and clear. The room grew incredibly tense, and her family was starting to think she'd been unfaithful to me. Just as everyone began to exit, her mother let out a loud cry about how much money they had spent on the wedding. She confronted her, asking how she had the nerve to wreck her life and future by getting involved with another man while engaged to be married. All of us, Josh and me included, left my almost wife alone in the chapel. Since that day, her sole mission has been to regain her family's trust and support. However, after that dreadful incident, I doubt things will ever be smooth for her again. Following a confrontation outside, AP came to realize rather swiftly that he had also messed up.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and click on the little bell icon for notifications of new stories.